15, 20, like how long has it been since
Since
like
I
you started your
graduated?
own thing?
Oh, since I started my own
Or
thing?
matter of fact, yeah, since graduation.
I
Probably,
graduated in 2003.
okay.
So 21 years.
That's a path. Like
Yeah.
you've been down the journey for that long, been through a bunch of stuff. We'll get to the
Yeah.
moment because that was a moment. But it's interesting because there's a designer in our community who had a similar path in the beginning.
Yeah.
Went to school not necessarily for graphic design per se, but it was like a digital media and advertising type of course, kind of like a communications course.
Yeah.
But originally was like, hey, I think I want to go the corporate designer agency route.
Yeah.
And that was a similar path that you took in the beginning, before the moment. So like, could you tell the story of like when you went to school, how you
Yep.
decided like graphic design was the thing that you were going to do
Sure.
or design, and then how you came to like find the agency and what that initial
Yeah.
life was like?
Okay. So I always loved to draw growing up. I just wanted to find any kind of career that I could draw in. Anytime you'd like take a one of those career tests to find out what you were going to be doing for the rest of your life, I'd always try to answer all the questions, so that would lead to that type of thing.
Yeah.
And while I was in college, when I finally was going to school for something I really cared about and going for art,
That makes a difference.
I all of a sudden my grades went way up. I was so much happier and passionate about everything that I was doing, and I felt like I found my place. I originally went to college for a major in drawing, which I don't know what you're supposed to do with that. But when I found design, I was like I always excelled at math, and I loved geometry, and then problem solving, and then there was the art side of it, and this brought it all together.
Yeah.
And I always struggled to figure out, like, how am I going to make a living as a fine artist? Because you have to find that voice or that one thing that you're good at, and not just so good at, but better than anybody else at, so that you can stand out and have a unique voice.
Yeah.
And I didn't always feel like I had found that until I found design. I'm like, okay, like I could do really good at this.
Yeah.
And I could find my own voice in it. And so I graduated right after 9/11, and the economy was tanking, and everybody was getting fired, and I was graduating. I needed to go find a job, and my advice from my portfolio teacher was to pretty much beg and offer to I will mop the floors, I will clean the paste up room, whatever it takes. The Super 77 booth, where that's like
That's insane.
I don't know if you remember Super 77. It's the glue for mounting paper onto boards and stuff when you're doing big presentations. And you'd have these off, and it's toxic and awful for you. And you'd have
gosh.
this. It was so bad. Just offered to do pretty much anything. And the other thing I had done is, you learn so much in those first 4 years when you're in school. Every single year, your taste is developing. It's like a baby.
Yeah.
You learn so much more from the year of 1 to 5 years old than you do from 30 to 35. You're learning to walk, and you're learning an entire language. They're learning balance. They're learning how to communicate with people, what they can get away with, what they can. There's just so much learning that happens.
You said taste. That's interesting. Like,
oh yeah.
How did you learn taste while you were in? Like, how did they teach you that? Like, how did you develop taste, like to know what's good?
Right. When I remember hearing this a long time ago, is that when you're looking to hire a designer, you can always teach them how to use the programs. You can always teach them new skills and all the machine-based things like that. But you can't always teach them taste. And
it's true.
Taste is developed over time. As a student, we were supposed to keep a scrapbook of, they're like, when you see awesome typography and or awesome logo or something that's inspiring, have a journal of them. And it was like pre-Pinterest, but it's basically the same idea.
Yeah.
And in the same sense, he wanted us as students to keep a second journal of things that we saw that we thought they were bad. And then we'd share and have conversations about why something was good and why something was bad. And I think the taste level is finding something that you like, but other people like as well. You know, and the best work that you'll ever create and be the happiest making is the kind of work that you're passionate about, you love making, but at the same time, everybody else feels passionate about it, and they have that connection and they want to buy it. You know, something that's going to sell and that you like doing. Like that's always the trick.
That's the sweet spot.
Find that,
Yeah.
and then do it for the rest of your life.
Yeah, that's the sweet spot.
So I graduate.
Yeah.
You know, during this hard time, I begged for the job. I had completely redone my portfolio my last year of college because I was talking about how you develop so much every year.
Yep.
And my portfolio was not great junior year. And then that last year, that senior year, I didn't sleep. I just worked and rebuilt it, every single piece with fresh eyes from this taste level of 4 years of experience versus the projects I had done my first and second year of graphic design. And I got the first interview I went after and started my career. And so how did I end up at an ad agency? You know, I always kind of dreamed about working at like some big, cool ad agency. The idea of it seemed so amazing. I was like they're working on these huge clients with big budgets that everybody sees. Where a lot of the boutique shops I worked on like tiny brands and startups and stuff like that, and things that probably not many people at all would see, or even if they did say they wouldn't look at it for the design. It's just more like functional things. Yeah. And so I like romanticized about it, and not like that's a wrong word for it, but I always thought it was really cool. Yeah. And I thought one day, and my wife jokes about it because she's like, once I landed in advertising and learned really what it was, and the culture that surrounded it wasn't ideal. You know, there was all the good stuff from the outside. It just like an advertisement. It seems so cool. It seems you're like, I want that product. But they're using all sorts of manipulation tactics to get you to buy that product. And the same way, like, wanted to work for that ad agency, and it seems so cool. They're like winning like best workplace of the year, and the space is so cool. And they're like, you're going to meet your new family, and the reason why it's your new family is because you're going to be living there pretty much, working all the time. And thank God it looks nice. And but it wasn't for me. It wasn't for me. So I think I answered both questions.
Yeah. So then the moment happens, and I think, I think that's something to talk about.
Yeah.
I think the power comes because you talk about like what happens afterwards. So I'd love if you could share that. You don't have to spend a ton of time there. You share about it publicly, so like people do know about it. But talk about the moment, what happened, and then how that sort of changes perspective. And you talk about like really two specific things that you learned from that.
Yes.
And I think those are the two things that I'm like really interested to deep dive in.
I'd love to talk about that too.
But yeah, if you could sort of talk about that, and then we can go into those two lessons.
Well, let me tell you the story for anybody who's listening who hasn't heard this before, and it's not super long. In 2009, I was shot, and that's not usually the type of thing you're expecting to hear. Listen to a graphic designer. Usually it's a portfolio show or something like that. But I was shot, and it was my wife's birthday. This was in 2009. She was turning 26 years old, and we invited everybody over. I saw pretty much everybody I knew and everybody I loved. All the people that would be at your funeral. I saw all those people that day, and people I hadn't seen in years, and people were bringing over their kids and families. Everybody was hanging out in our yard, just having a good time. And near the end of the night, when it was just a couple of us left, two masked men entered our yard and demanded our money. And one of them put a gun to my wife's head. And it was her birthday. We were trying to have a baby at the time. There was a good chance she was pregnant. And I overreacted probably, but man, I wasn't going to let this, I couldn't handle it. And I just attacked the guy closest to me.
Yeah.
and the guy with the gun turned and shot me in the ribs. And I did probably like the exact opposite thing again that you should never do at that point. I charged him like an elephant. I was just screaming to get the hell away from my family and out of my yard. And I chased these guys for about a half a block before I realized I was dying. This bullet passed between two ribs. It's still in me, and it went through my. Let's see if I can remember all the different organs: gallbladder, large and small intestine, my spleen, my appendix. I feel like I'm missing one. It didn't go through my heart or my lungs, thank God.
And 2 major arteries, I think you said.
Yeah, 2 major arteries. And the doctors had me opened up and stapling and stitching me and saving my life and working on me for over a day, which is a really long time for a surgery, which is one of the reasons they didn't take the bullet out, because there was just so much to do and they didn't want to have me open any longer than that. And they saved my life. And afterward, the doctors told me that it was an absolute miracle that I was still alive, that if the bullet would have hit one of the ribs, it would have exploded and splintered and destroyed all my organs. And that,
so it missed all the bones. It just went through
it
tissue.
Passed between 2 ribs.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And also, if I was running at the time, working out, I was running like 6 miles 2-3 times a week. And they said if I wasn't doing that, because I hit those 2 major arteries and I lost over half the blood internally in my body, I would have lost more and I'd be dead. I would have bled to death. So that's a miracle.
Yeah.
And then the detectives never found a bullet casing. And you can imagine, if I'm chasing guys who already tried to kill me, why didn't they just fire another shot and end me? And it means the gun probably, the detectives figured it probably jammed. And these guys were, like it was on the news, they were performing robberies for like 5 nights straight, and they had a different gun the next day. So, absolute miracle that I'm still alive. Afterwards, my wife took a pregnancy test, and we found out she was, while I was still in the hospital, found out she was pregnant with my first son, Matthew, who is 13 years old now, taller than she is, just a sweet kid.
It's amazing.
And I feel like God saved me to use my gifts to help other people. And the main lessons that I took away from this is that in life, just to not be a feather in the wind.
Yeah.
To not let fear be my master.
Yeah.
To chase dreams, because life is short. You know, like I thought I was dead. When I was laying there on the ground in that backyard and Maria's putting the pressure on the wound and she's like, Jennifer, you call the police. Ben, go get towels, because my wife's, she's on it. A lot of people freeze up, and she saved, I should add that, she saved my life too. Her reaction, how on it she was. Yeah. She's always like that too. She's like the most amazing woman. And I'm incredibly grateful for how everything worked out. And that was the pivot point. You know, I at the time, I was working those 65-hour weeks at the ad agency. I was shot on a Saturday. I was supposed to come into work on Sunday, and I was supposed to come into work on Monday as well, which was Labor Day. And obviously, I didn't do those things. And I was tired of that. I was tired of, always taking orders, being told what to do, just like waiting for people to guide me, and instead to take the reins and take a more of a leadership role in my path, my journey, and my family's journey, and our path. And since then, my life has transformed. And I could talk about some of those things. I'm not sure if you wanted me to get into that just yet. Yeah, no, I think it's, you said 3 things that I thought were great. Like, 1, don't let fear be your master. Yes.
2, chase your dreams.
Yes.
And then 3, use your gifts to help people. And so, like, almost in that order, like, to think, like, when you say, and in my mind I'm thinking, like, there's a designer in school or who's just out or who's starting a business, who's early, because you've done so much now. You've built an agency. You've got a team. There's a lot.
Oh, I don't have a team.
It's just you.
It's myself and my wife. She does the numbers and stuff. It looks like I have a team.
So there's that. Like to even talk through like that
Yes.
process and what it's like to run such an influential or impactful type of studio.
Yeah.
For someone who hasn't done that yet. But the idea, I guess, first of like how would you talk to a younger person when it comes to not letting fear be their master, especially like
Yeah.
when you think imposter syndrome coming up in there and how that's always active in that
Right.
in that regard. Like how would you sort of talk to? And then you've been doing it here.
Right. Well, so one of the things I started doing very quickly, and I just talked to somebody about this at the conference. When I started working at Target, and so basically, I left the ad agency, worked at Target for 5 years, which it was more chill, and I worked on better brands and produced better work and better hours, had more family time, but it was just a nice transition. And one of the things I started doing and I learned is when I would get like that weird revision or somebody was like making me do something to a project that was going to ruin it, I would just call them out, not call them out, like, and not be mean or rude. You know, I'm a Christian guy. I'm going to be friendly. I'm going to be constructive.
Yeah.
But I'll call them and say, you know what? I don't know if, well, let's say making the logo bigger is going to solve the problem.
Yeah.
You know, if something's not on brand, like let's work some of the more of the brand colors in there, or let's take some geometry from the mark and apply it to how we're treating the corners on our photos. Or are there other ways where we can make it feel on brand without just making the logo bigger? Because that's not going to help them with their business goals. Because the people are asking me to do that. In the end, they have an agenda, like whether they're selling a product or getting people to go to an event. That's what they're most excited about.
Yeah.
That's what they're not as pumped about the work as I am. You know, that's what I went to school for. That's what I love doing. And so I like to play my role and do the best I can and stay in my lane. And when they start crossing over their lane and start going into the creative director role of something that they don't have a history in doing, you know, I take the reins back and I got him back on the. And I think at any point you can do that. You can do that as an intern. You can do that as a junior designer. And once you're the higher ups see that you're taking a leadership role, that you're offering advice and guiding people, and that could be talking to a creative director or setting boundaries or guidelines. I talked to somebody the other day where she said they keep giving her 1-day logo projects, and I said, you know, get that one project done, but then before the next one comes, set up those boundaries and say, offer, like, you know how much better it's going to be if I do more of a process, and explain what the process is going to be and what she needs, so that next time they plan for it and they don't expect it's going to be another 1 hour or a 1-day process. And if you set up those expectations, usually they'll respect that, and it's going to make everybody happier because they're going to end up with a better product in the end. And so then the other great thing, especially from that younger role, when you show those leadership skills, they're going to promote you, and they're going to promote you way quicker, because they're like, oh, this person it might be 25 years old, but they have the potential to be a creative director or an ACD, you know, like something at a higher level. I knew a fella, he graduated, and like 2 years out of school, this agency made him ECD, and he was like, he was leading an entire agency of people that were twice his age.
That's crazy.
I was always so weirded out by. I'm like, how did they do that? And he just has those genes, was prolific, and knew what he was doing. And then he eventually started his own thing, and he was making like it was just like him running, like, I think he was making like over $1 million a year.
That's insane.
It was nuts.
There's you've worked for some of the biggest brands around, right? Obviously, you worked for Target. You've done things for cities and governments and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's anything that you've seen when it comes to brand identity. Like, I'm super passionate about identity formation, just because I know, like, people struggle. Like, the question of who am I? I think is one of the hardest questions people ask. Right. And again, it's the thing you deal with when you're doing discovery sessions. You do that call, and it's like, well, what do you, who are you? And when brands get stuck at that point,
Right.
it's an exploration,
Yes.
and that takes time. Has there been something that has come up that you've been like, I'm so surprised that a brand this big struggles with the same things that maybe individuals, struggle with when it comes to brand identity and formation?
Well, the thing that can happen with these bigger brands is if there's not a strong leader at the top guiding, a creative leader who understands design, understands voice, understands all of it, if there's not somebody steering the ship who really knows what they're doing, a lot of the times, even if they have all the money in the world, everything starts feeling different, and it feels like different voices coming from different places and different people's personality. And to have a brand stay really pure where you're like, I know it's going to be that color every time. I know it's going to be that voice every time. It's going to have this feel and this vibe. And somebody from that leadership world where they're not making anything, but they're making sure everything's consistent and it's lining up with whatever they have, with their brand manual. But not just like, hey, it has the logo and everything, but consistency, whether it's colors or textures, how it feels, who it's talking to, the voice, brand tenets, all these different things. And it's hard to steer that many things at once. And a lot of the times they'll get a lot of pushback from their employees because as creatives in general tend to have big egos. And at least in terms of what they're making, especially when you're dealing with like really, you're spending a lot of money on like really awesome agencies.
Yeah.
The agencies, they're, I remember like specific agencies where they would present one direction. They'd be like, this is what you get. and we know what's best. We know better than you because
experts.
We're the experts. And that's, to each their own. That's not my thing, because then like they're trying to take those reins and it's not going to have that consistent feel. And if same thing, if that leader isn't taking that leadership role and they're letting all these other people take it, it's going to feel like all sorts of different brands. Look at Amazon. So Amazon, they had like their gift cards had a lowercase a with a smile on it, the smile logo. And then other things would have just a smile. And then there was like AWS brand that had this like 3D boxes, and they had the music brand, which looked different. And it was all these different things. And the logo, my buddy Brian worked there, Brian Lohr, and the one thing he really did well and transformed at that company was he just got them to use the smile on everything. Get rid of that lowercase a. Always stay consistent. All the sub brands now are the smile with type, and it's usually the exact same font. Yeah. And even though it's the exact same logo, that level of consistency all of a sudden seems so much more sophisticated.
Yeah.
And the brand went from like, oh, it was Amazon to like Amazon. That's a pretty good, like, amazing brand.
It's almost like they're being now mentioned in the same sphere as Apple and Nike, in the sense of like, oh, I feel like I relate to the company now, as opposed to, okay, well, it's just a big company. And I feel like that's an important thing. And you've mentioned this, especially when you talk about like agencies that come in and try to, oh, hey, here's the one because we're the experts. It feels like there's a role of humility, despite having the kind of expertise that you have, still coming in with a degree of humility to say, hey, let me show you a smattering of options so that you have as much choice as possible. And then I can rework, like you talked about, like showing 15 options. And I feel like that's compared to the person who comes and said, I'm going to give you one. And that's that's me telling you because I feel like I'm the expert. You're saying, no, I'm going to come with 15 because I want to do my best to serve you and give you the most options so that you leave with something that you feel like is yours. Like, what role does that play, and how do you develop that?
So for me, I'm coming in as an expert in logo and brand design. My client is an expert in their brand.
Right.
And I'm not going to pretend that I know their brand better than them. They work on their brand every day, and I work on a lot of different brands. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to help them with the brand identity and the initial stuff, and then I'm going to be working on something else in a month or two. And so I'm I'm coming in there to be their guide and the expert at what I do well, and then I wanna lean on them for what they do well and what they know in that strategy. And I think if you only give them a few options, you're taking that away, and I think you can end up with, not only will they be more upset with it and they're going to try and like tweak it and change it and bend it to what they want it to be after you leave, or it's going to be it never works out as well, or there's like a ton of revisions because they're trying to get it to a place where they feel some ownership over it. I try and let them have that ownership on a mark up front. So like, let's say I'm working with a big client where it has to go through like an 8-layer sandwich before it can get approved.
Yeah.
There's all the different layers where all these people can only say no.
Yeah.
And then there's finally up here is the person who can say yes.
Yeah.
I want to get them involved at the beginning. So I'll come up with a list of like subject matter, what this brand mark is going to be. And that's the point where I don't want them, each of these people on the layer sandwich to want to put their fingerprint on it so everybody knows that they played a part and that they're making their money and they're
just
that they're just like a yes man.
Yeah.
Let them put their fingerprint on it at the beginning when they figure out the subject matter because they do know that brand better, and then they'll back off during that revision round because they'll be happier with it and they'll feel like they put their thumbprint on it, and you're gonna end up with a more pure mark at the end.
That's great.
So
that's great.
So that's why I give them more options at the beginning, but then I guide them and I lead them to what I know is the best work at the end.
That's
and
awesome.
It's not a manipulation tactic whatsoever. It just strategically makes a heck of a lot more sense for me. And I've tried a lot of different stuff in my 20-year career, and I've been doing it this way now for the last 9, and I've made the best work of my career doing it.
You talk about being a guide, and I think that's like, you hear from authors. I don't know if you're familiar with Donald Miller. He's a pretty major. He's kind of like a business coach, business sort of thought leader now.
Yeah.
He wrote a book called Building a Story Brand. And so there's like a path. He feels like, let's make it simple in every situation. And you do this intuitively, but sometimes the mistake that companies will make is like they position themselves as the hero. He's like, your customer is the hero. Yes. You're the guide. Right. So a hero has a problem but meets a guide. You come into the story at that guide moment, to show them a plan and then lead them to success, avoid failure. That's sort of his framework.
Yeah.
Which is like, that's exactly what you're talking about. I want to come in as a guide and then show them like which direction to take. This will probably be the last question. But I'm interested because my experience in sort of identity formation, branding, coaching, or anything of that sort.
Yeah.
And a lot of the designers in our community who are like brand designers always run into websites. And I know you don't, that's not the specialty you're in. But I'm interested in like what experience you've had with web design, like in the process of creating brand identities because typically some of them need it.
Yes.
And just interested in like what that experience has been, any experience that you've had like building websites and positives and negatives that you had in like web design tools and things of that sort, and how you've chosen to sort of like approach brand design the way that you have.
Okay. When I graduated, there was a program called Macromedia Flash, and about a quarter to a third of the websites that felt like were designed using this program because it was really expressive. You could have a lot of animation. You could have sound effects. There was a lot of really beautiful stuff you could do with it, and I could design it. I learned how to code it and program it, self-taught.
Yeah.
And I love doing all sorts of beautiful animations and multi-tiered illustrations where you might scroll back and forth, and the foreground and background are shipped. It was just really, really tasteful things that brought a lot of the brand identity to life visually. And then when the iPhone came around, Steve Jobs hated Flash, and because it was hard to program for it, and especially to get into Safari on a phone. And he just said no, and it killed it. It completely killed it. And so I feel websites in general and interactive design has changed and transformed. It is much less expressive and much more functional now. You can be expressive, but not to that level anymore. It's more of, I think with most websites, you want it in the same way like when you walk into a gallery, art gallery. it's simple. You don't want to distract from the work. You want a clean experience. You don't want it to be confusing to get to the work or the thing that you want to look at. You'd want the least amount of clicks. You want the best user experience. So if somebody it comes to, I don't know, a .com site like Walmart.com and they're looking for something, or Amazon, they can easily find what they're looking for in the least clicks possible, and then also maybe some other things that they might be interested that are like that to possibly make some other sales, and they can easily navigate to wherever they need to go after that, and that everything is like functional both on like big screens and small screens, and that it fits your thumb for the small screens, that it's legible, that it doesn't hurt your eyes, that you don't have to squint, that there's all the functionality is key. And it's almost more like building a functional, smooth running machine. And for me, going to school as an artist, and I do like the design, I do like the gridding, I also like art and expression, and the amount of time it takes to develop and create and do well to create a beautiful website. And the amount, usually you need a really big team too.
Yeah.
There's experts there. Like there's the UX guy, the UI guy. There's the or gal. There's the designers. There's the producers, and it's like producing a film almost. It's not that big, or like a video game. There's a lot to it, and I feel like it's become less of what I was excited about, and so when it shifted, I had to make a decision. Like, am I gonna keep following and chasing this train, and reteach myself how to code and how to build this, which that was a path, or should I strengthen one of my other skills? At the time, like right when that transition happened, I was working at a small studio called Industrio, and some posters I had designed got featured in How Magazine and Print Magazine. It was the first national awards I'd ever won, and all of a sudden, I just kind of I felt like that was the direction I was being led to, and that's what I really liked doing. Especially I was doing a lot of illustrations and design work at the time, and so I just kept chasing that. And the reason why I focus now on logo design, and this is. We talked about this right at the beginning, and maybe we talked about it before we started recording. I can't remember, but the sweet spot is when you can find something that you like doing and that people want to buy, and then just spend your life doing that over and over and over again. And the thing people kept contacting me for, because as a logo designer and a brand identity designer, I'm always working with new clients, and so I've always got new people to meet and new people coming in, and I'm always it's not retainer clients. It's always fresh eyes and fresh people, and so I end up working with a huge mix of brands, and it's a really nice field for me where I fulfill those needs creatively, and I'm really happy going to work every day. Like I love doing what I do for a living, and even when I'm on an amazing vacation, having a really good time for like a couple of weeks, I could be on a beach, I could be exploring a museum. After a few weeks away, I'm like, oh, I just want to make something. I love getting my hands dirty, and I'm so thankful that God put this in my life, and that I can use my gifts to help people.